Hello, my name is Mike O'Neill, Director of Development for Radiant Studios, which is a startup that while I was there, I worked on a couple of internal projects with the rest of the team to show off to potential clients. But it also gave me an opportunity to work on a bunch of personal stuff, which I've been meaning to get to for a while. I enjoy it. I wanted to learn a few things, which I also enjoy, like Unreal and Unity VR. But with DAX, it wasn't just learning stuff, it was a chance to finish off a project that, though we had an outline for, barely had a chance to get off the ground while I was at Riff Raff Games. But it is definitely my flagship project, which is why it's first on the resume and why I'm making a video explaining it. Now, what I wanted to learn with DAX was editor coding. Done plenty of game coding, but I wanted to learn editor coding. And it was a good opportunity because I knew that the designer was going to want to make a bunch of different puzzles. And so I figured I'd use editor coding to give the designer a nice, convenient, simple, easy to use in engine tool to create the puzzles. Now, I barely had a chance to get any art off of the artist. All I got was a bare bones, layout of the default puzzle setup, which is very, very plain. So everything else I either got from the asset store or online. So it is very, very, very um, programmer art. But this is supposed to be a programming demo. Now you'll also notice this error with the nodes.prefab. Now this is an error from art that I don't have the source, and the artist that made it I haven't spoken to in years. So unfortunately, when you rekindle a project years after it started, things happen. But it's no problem because once you clear it, you never see it again until you delete your library folder. Okay, so let's get to it. So like I said, it's an all-in editor puzzle creator. So you go to Mo Productions, you click on DAX, and you click on Create Puzzle. Now that loads up the bare bones stuff that I got from the artist. Now to use the tool, you click on DAX Puzzle Setup, and then you lock it. Now everything underneath the transform is the tool. So for example, you can see all these little gizmos there. You can shut them off and on. Now, everything from here to here is the puzzle stuff. So let's start off by changing the name. We'll call this DAX demo. Now, this name isn't really used unless you use the binary save system that I created, but I'll get to that a little later. So we can change the level time, which is just, the number of seconds for the level. Now, victory conditions are basically the game modes, and I'll get to those in a second. Now, the purpose of the game is to collect what we call facets of different colors. Now, how you collect them depends on the game mode. In collection, it doesn't really matter what they are. Um, but in color match, it does. But like I said, I'll get to that in a minute. Now, the other thing is the number of rings. So, 4 rings is a pretty intense puzzle. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to bump that down to 1. Now, you get this warning because if you go from 4 to 1, and you work you had done on those further out rings will get reset, but we don't care. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is another reason why I created this tool. So basically, if you click on the player now, you get the usual Unity Inspector stuff. There's a lot of stuff there, but I wanted to make things much, cleaner for the designer. So part of the tool is you notice how it stops here. When you click on the player, it adds another section. Now, this just makes things a lot easier to manipulate, mainly because the only thing that the designer should be messing with the player is the speed. And so it filters out everything else that you normally see in an inspector to just show what you want. And it's also got a much nicer, slider, and it also allows for boundaries. So, you don't make the speed 10,000. Um, so that's what that is for. Now, one important thing to note is that if you make any changes to the puzzle, you have to click Init Puzzle before you start playing. So press play and click to start, and not very exciting, but that's just, a preview. Now, the most important thing, or at least the first thing you do when creating a puzzle, is to clear out the channels. Like these are all channels, but they're blocked. So you got to clear them out. And the way you do that is you click on each channel has two different pieces. And you could turn them on and off in the inspector like most things, but because this is done so often, I, hooked it up to the B button. So you just B, B, and let's do another one, let's say here. Now, if you wanted to turn one of those back on, you click on the red square and turn it back on. So let's make a few channels in the outer ring. Let's go here and here and here and here. Okay, now again, Init the puzzle. Now it gets a little bit more interesting. So you click to start. Now you never actually control the player. What you do is you control the rings to guide the player through the various channels to get them to go where you want. So let's get on to this one. Boom. And you can also, let's go back into here, and there you go. And that's how you guide the player, and that's the way that it works. But still not very exciting because there's nothing really going on. Now, excuse me. Now, to start adding stuff to the board, now each channel has 3 nodes. Sometimes they overlap, like here. But the only nodes you can really mess with, the nodes are, used for other reasons. But the only reason that you can only put stuff on the middle node. Now, the facet is the core of the gameplay. That's what you have to collect to actually win the game. So, actually, let's turn this one on. I'll show you why in a second. So go back to here, and we're going to create a facet. Now, much like with the player, it gives you a customized, trimmed down version of what you want to mess with this particular board object. In this case, it's the color. So let's make this one purple, and let's make one out here, and let's make that one blue, and make it blue. Now, another thing you'll notice, and this shows up on every type of board object, is the ping and the delete. Now, what the ping is that this hierarchy has a lot of stuff in it because this board is made out of a zillion pieces. But if for whatever reason you wanted to, find this in the hierarchy, you click ping, and there you go. It shows it. And you also have the delete. Now, it's important to note that make sure that you use the delete on the tool to delete the board object. I actually had an enemy that I actually accidentally deleted in the hierarchy, but it was invisible, but it still killed me. So let's create that facet again, make it blue, and at the puzzle, and you'll notice that these numbers will update. This is just a way to keep track of what you want. Now the other problem is that if you like these, wireframe spheres here are basically showing your starting channel. And if we started right here, the player would just bounce off and back and forth like it had done before. So in order to change the starting channel, you click on one of these internal nodes and go make starting channel. And this is convenient because we're just going to bump right into this thing. So Init the puzzle, play, click start, and boom, you got the first one. Now let's get the second one. There you go. That's how you win. And this keeps track of the facets you've collected, your score, your time. And I know, it's programmer error, but that's okay. Now, the other game mode is called Color Match. Now, Color Match is different in that you don't collect the facets, you drag them to one of the bumpers. Now, these are bumpers, and there's different types. Regular, which you just bounce, death, which you die, and then conveniently color match. So let's make this one purple, and where's that other node? Let's take this bumper and make it color match, and let's make it blue. All right, lovely. Now, again, Init the puzzle, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, start the game, and you're going to immediately, again, pick up that facet, which is fine. But I wanted to show real quick that if you go to the wrong bumper, nothing happens. So you got to get it to the right bumper. So let's do that, and boom, you got it. Now let's get to the blue facet. Sorry, my mouse ran out of room. Get that, and then collect the facet. Let's get into a longer version of the tunnel. And there you go. You won. So those are the two different game modes that you can choose for each puzzle. It's not for the whole game. Now, that's, again, it's cool, but it's not really all that interesting because there's no challenge. So let's click on this node. Now, there's a bunch of different stuff that you can add. And I'm not going to go over all of it because some of it is self-explanatory and it would make the video go on forever. And, excuse me, I put a bunch of documentation on what they all do and, what you can mod on them in the README. So, for example, the hazards. Now, these are what kill people. You can have an enemy, a dynamite, or glue. Enemy bounces around the level like normal. Dynamite just stays there, but it still kills you. And glue, you stick in place for a little bit. So let's make a piece of dynamite, and let's turn off these 3D icons. And let's change here. This is just it's a death sentence, but that's okay. So click Init Puzzle, press play, and boom, you're dead. Okay, wonderful. Now, let's get rid of that. And let's make an enemy, which is a much more interesting hazard because they move. Now, you can change the type of hazard on the fly. You don't have to delete and create a new one. Once you're in a certain type of board object, you can change it to whatever you want. There's the glue. Now let's go with enemy. An outward, or the direction is if they're going to go outward or inward, and then the speed is, obviously the speed. So init the puzzle, press play, and the cool thing is that you can control where the enemies go just like the players. There's no difference. They're following the same algorithm. So let's just say we want to kill our player, even though I might not want to do that. Boom, you just died. So you can manipulate where the enemy is going just like the player. Now, let's get rid of that. Now, a lot of the other stuff is like speed mods. You can have player, enemy, or ring speed mods. You can have point mods and all that kind of stuff. Now, the one thing that I wanted to show is the facet collect. Now, the facet collect and the shield behave differently than everything else because they they don't activate when you pick them up. You have to actually activate them. Now there's ring, which will, get all the facets from the ring, and wheel, which will get them from the whole wheel. It's basically game over. So init puzzle, press play, and so now, a little button comes up. So let's say, okay, I want to clear out all the facets on this ring. Boom. That's how it works. And the shield works the same way. You have to activate it. Okay, now those were, board objects, but you can do other stuff outside of the board objects. For example, a ring. So there's a ring here, and one thing you can do is you can change the ring speed. You can also do that with a speed mod, but let's just do it here for now. Hit puzzle, and you'll notice it'll move a lot faster. So there you go. Now you're cooking. Okay, let's put that back down to 10. Now, reset ring is, it'll basically fill in, all of the channels and get rid of all of the board objects, which is convenient. Now, there is an issue with this that I discovered just recently. This works perfectly fine on PC. I mostly worked on this game on PC. Never had any problems. But because, it's meant for mobile, and I, have a Mac just for that, I, bumped it over to the Mac, and unfortunately when I pressed ring reset, it was getting this error. And I looked it up, couldn't really figure out exactly what was going on, but I did find a solution, which was to, instead of just, pulling up the pop-up when you click the button, you use a coroutine to, yield for a frame, and then you show the pop-up. Now, big deal, it's just a frame, right? Well, unfortunately, it kind of makes the tool a little wonky. So reset ring, and you see it pops up there, and then now you do it, and everything is reset. So again, annoying, but that's a Mac thing, and fortunately I was able to figure out how to get around it. So What's in it? The puzzle again. Now I'm gonna. Now, of course, you could save this as a regular scene, but I want to show you the binary stuff. So the binary stuff was to A, make the puzzle smaller, which is probably not necessary these days, but also I wanted, the game to be able to load up infinite amount of puzzles without having to change scenes. So you stay in the one scene and you can just load up new puzzles, really, really fast. And so the way it works is, you've got your name, and then you go. Let's just hit the puzzle. You go Mo Productions Dax Save Puzzle. Now it saves it in the resources puzzles, but you can see it's blank. Now I'm not really sure why that is, but the way to get around it is you just open up a new scene. So you do that, create. Yeah, let's not bother saving because we have it in binary. Now the puzzle shows up. So when you go Mo Productions Dax Load Puzzle, it brings up the pop-up. Click Dax demo.dax, open it up, and boom, there you go. There's your puzzle. And also, if you didn't want to mess with that stuff, and you just want to play the game, I did include a couple of demo scenes for collect and color match that you can just jump in and play with and not have to worry about making a puzzle. Anyway, that's Dax. I'm Mike O'Neill. Thank you for watching, and I really hope to speak to you guys someday. Thank you.